Quentin Tarantino is not a filmmaker you casually watch. You listen to his movies. You remember the conversations. You anticipate the violence long before it arrives. Every Tarantino film feels like it was made by someone who knows exactly what cinema has been and exactly what it can get away with. He didn't come from film school or the studio system. He came from video store aisles, worn VHS tapes, and arguments about movies that most people had forgotten. While others studied technique, Tarantino studied taste. He learned why scenes linger, why dialogue matters, and why genres never really die. They just wait for the right filmmaker to resurrect them. When Tarantino arrived in the early 1990s, Hollywood was predictable. Crime films followed rules. Dialogue served the plot. Violence was either sanitized or sensationalized. Tarantino ignored all of that. He let criminals talk about pop culture instead of the crime. He fractured timelines instead of smoothing them out. He made music choices that felt wrong until they felt perfect. What followed wasn't just a successful career. It was a shift in how movies were written, edited, and consumed. Independent cinema became mainstream. Genre films reclaimed artistic respect. And dialogue-heavy scenes became some of the most tense moments in modern film. This isn't the story of a director who fit into Hollywood. It's the story of a filmmaker who reminded the industry and audiences why movies are supposed to be dangerous, playful, and unforgettable. This is Quentin Tarantino, and this is Cinema Uncovered. Quentin Tarantino was born in 1963 in Knoxville, Tennessee, but his creative identity was shaped in Los Angeles. Long before he ever touched a film camera, Tarantino was already studying cinema. Not academically, but obsessively. His real education came in the 1980s at Video Archives in Manhattan Beach, where he worked as a clerk, surrounded by shelves of VHS tapes. Tarantino consumed films from every era and every corner of the world. Spaghetti westerns, Hong Kong action cinema, Japanese samurai films, grindhouse exploitation, French New Wave, and classic Hollywood all blended into a single cinematic language. Unlike traditional film students, Tarantino didn't separate high art from low art. To him, a low-budget exploitation film could be just as influential as a Hollywood classic, sometimes more so. This belief would become central to his career. During this period, Tarantino began writing screenplays that prioritized dialogue and character over conventional structure. He believed conversations could create tension more effectively than action, and that audiences were willing to wait if the payoff was worth it. That philosophy reached the screen with Reservoir Dogs in 1992. Funded in part by actor Harvey Keitel, the film rejected traditional crime movie storytelling. The heist itself was never shown. Instead, Tarantino focused on paranoia, betrayal, and the moments between explosions of violence. Premiering at the Sundance Film Festival, Reservoir Dogs instantly marked Tarantino as a new and dangerous voice in independent cinema, one driven not by rules, but by instinct and an encyclopedic love of movies. In 1994, Quentin Tarantino released Pulp Fiction, and nothing about independent cinema felt small anymore. The film ignored traditional structure, telling its story out of order and trusting the audience to piece it together. Instead of racing toward plot points, Tarantino slowed everything down. Hitmen talk about fast food. Criminals debated pop culture. Tension came from conversation, not action. Pulp Fiction premiered at the Cannes Film Festival, where it won the Palme d'Or, a rare honor for an American independent film. It went on to earn 7 Academy Award nominations and 1 Best Original Screenplay, confirming Tarantino as one of the most distinctive writers in Hollywood. The film didn't just succeed critically, it reshaped the industry. Independent films suddenly had a blueprint for mainstream success. Non-linear storytelling became acceptable. Dialogue-heavy scenes became commercial assets instead of risks. Actors' careers were transformed. John Travolta experienced a major comeback. Samuel L. Jackson became inseparable from Tarantino's cinematic identity. Even minor characters felt iconic because the writing demanded attention. More than anything, Pulp Fiction proved that audiences didn't need their hands held. If the characters were compelling and the dialogue sharp, viewers were willing to follow anywhere. After Pulp Fiction, Quentin Tarantino wasn't just a filmmaker. He was a reference point. By the mid-1990s, Quentin Tarantino had established a clear language, dialogue, tension, and sudden bursts of violence. But what truly set him apart was how he combined style with substance. Violence in Tarantino's films is never accidental. It's stylized, deliberate, and cinematic, shocking yet controlled. Critics often label it excessive, while supporters argued it functions as modern myth-making. Whether it's the ear-cutting scene in Reservoir Dogs or the choreographed sword fights of Kill Bill, Tarantino uses violence as storytelling, not filler. He has repeatedly said that cinematic violence is different from reality. It's symbolic, almost ritualistic. Equally essential is his approach to sound and music. Instead of commissioning traditional scores, Tarantino curates songs that transform scenes. Surf rock, soul, funk, and spaghetti western themes often resurface, sometimes decades after they were first released, giving the film an unforgettable tone. Think of Missilao opening Pulp Fiction, or the haunting Ennio Morricone tracks in The Hateful Eight. The music doesn't accompany the story. It shapes it. This combination, precise dialogue, stylized violence, and curated music created a signature cinematic experience. Tarantino's movies feel alive, dangerous, and exhilarating because every element, words, blood, and sound, is carefully orchestrated. It was clear by now, Tarantino wasn't just a director. He was a cinematic composer, arranging sights, sounds, and words into an unforgettable rhythm. After redefining crime cinema and dialogue, Tarantino turned to honoring and reshaping film genres. In 1997, Jackie Brown paid homage to 1970s blaxploitation films while showcasing a more measured, character-driven approach. Starring Pam Grier, the film reflected Tarantino's respect for actors and genres that Hollywood had often overlooked. Unlike his earlier work, tension here was subtle, rooted in character choices and quiet confrontations rather than sudden violence. The 2000s brought audacious stylistic experimentation. Kill Bill, Volume 1 and Volume 2 fused martial arts cinema, revenge westerns, anime, and grindhouse aesthetics. Shot as a single project and released in 2 parts, the saga was hyper-stylized, choreographed sword fights, comic book framing, and vibrant cinematography. Tarantino wasn't just directing. He was orchestrating a cinematic celebration of global film culture. With Inglourious Bastard in 2009, Tarantino took a radical leap, rewriting history. The film imagines a World War II where cinema itself becomes a weapon, culminating in one of the most audacious alternate history endings in modern film. Christoph Waltz's performance as Hans Landa won an Academy Award and introduced one of Tarantino's most chilling villains. Tarantino followed this with Django Unchained, blending spaghetti western revenge fantasy with the historical trauma of American slavery. The film's bold mix of action, humor, and historical commentary sparked debate, earned another Academy Award for Best Original Screenplay, and became his highest-grossing release at that time. In these films, Tarantino wasn't just paying tribute. He was rewriting cinematic history, blending genres, eras, and cultural memory into something uniquely his own. In his later career, Quentin Tarantino began reflecting on both Hollywood and his own journey as a filmmaker. The Hateful Eight, 2015, showcases mastery of claustrophobic tension and dialogue. Filmed in Ultra Panavision 70, a format rarely used since the 1960s. The film emphasized character-driven suspense over plot speed, proving Tarantino could still innovate visually and narratively. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, 2019, became a nostalgic love letter to 1960s Los Angeles, old Hollywood, and the fading golden age of cinema. Starring Leonardo DiCaprio and Brad Pitt, the film blended historical events with revisionist storytelling, reflecting Tarantino's enduring fascination with myth memory and the ways cinema can reshape history. Throughout his career, Tarantino has consistently emphasized that he plans to retire after 10 films. He believes that directors should leave the industry on their own terms before their influence wanes. While debates continue about what counts toward that 10-film total, the intent is clear. Tarantino wants to preserve his voice and legacy, untainted by overextension. His career demonstrates that formal training isn't necessary to master cinema. Obsession, knowledge, passion, and a clear voice can achieve the same, or more. Tarantino has not only reshaped modern filmmaking, he's reminded audiences why movies exist. to thrill, shock, entertain, and provoke thought. Interesting trivias. Quentin Tarantino wrote the scripts for True Romance and Natural Born Killers before he ever directed a feature. Reservoir Dogs was partially funded by actor Harvey Keitel, who also helped the film gain exposure at Sundance. Tarantino considers Jackie Brown his most mature and realistic film. He often writes scenes with specific actors in mind, sometimes years before casting. The Hateful Eight was shot in Ultra Panavision 70, reviving a format last widely used in the 1960s. Tarantino owns a new Beverly Cinema in Los Angeles and personally programs screenings of classic films. He adapted Once Upon a Time in Hollywood into a novel, expanding the story beyond the film. Christoph Waltz has won 2 Oscars for playing Tarantino villains, Inglourious Bastard and Django Unchained. Tarantino rarely uses traditional film scores, favoring carefully curated pre-existing songs that define scenes. He has cited video store clerk experience as critical to learning film history and developing his cinematic voice. Quentin Tarantino didn't just make movies. He redefined what it meant to tell stories on film. He took genres, dialogue, and music, the tools every filmmaker inherits, and rearranged them into something entirely new. He reminded audiences that cinema isn't just about following rules. It's about breaking them with style, intelligence, and passion. From the video store aisles of Los Angeles to the red carpets of Cannes, Tarantino's journey proves that obsession can outweigh tradition and that a single voice, when uncompromising, can leave an indelible mark on the world of film. His legacy isn't measured in box office numbers or awards alone. It's measured in influence, in filmmakers daring to be bold, in dialogue that lingers, in violence and humor that shock and entertain, and in the way audiences now pay attention to every frame. Quentin Tarantino may retire after 10 films, but his voice will echo long after. For those who love cinema, his work is a reminder that movies are dangerous, playful, unforgettable, and, above all, alive. This is Cinema Uncovered,